Recently, I've been wanting to participate in more game jams. I've never made a video about one, but I decided to do a game jam over the weekend that was a completely unique experience that I thought I'd share. I hate making games for game jams and not finishing them in time. I did it recently when I tried to enter the black and white game jam, which I didn't get very far in because I was so busy. In case you're not aware, a game jam is an event hosted for game devs to make small games based around a theme in a short period of time. They're really fun because you often end up making games you never would have made otherwise. This game jam I did was no exception. Before I get started, I really appreciate everyone for watching. If you would check to see if you're subscribed, it would be really helpful. I put a lot of effort into my videos and they take a while, so subscribing will make sure that you don't miss anything. Essentially, there was this jam called the Paint Jam that I've been wanting to do for a while. The idea is that all the art must be made in MS Paint or in an MS Paint alternative. This sounded like a lot of fun to me because I've been making almost all my games in a pixel art style recently. I decided I would use Animate CC instead of MS Paint, mostly because I have no idea how I would export art from MS Paint, but I reduced the brush smoothness to give the game that rough art feel. I've also been working on a game with my friends Sam, Joey, and Kosu, where Sam is making the art in Animate CC, so I know how to export it. Let me tell you, it is a huge pain in the butt to get art from Animate CC to Construct 2, but it is possible. When I went to find some other game jams to do though, I found out that the Frog Jam was happening almost at the same time. It started a little bit earlier and ended a little later than the Paint Jam, so I decided I should join both and make one game to submit to 2 jams. I got this idea from Vimlark. If you haven't seen his videos, I do highly recommend them. Now, I still had school and my job that I had to work around, so I planned to get the art done the first day, the main gameplay the second day, and the sound and menu and finishing touches on the third day. The Paint Jam ran from 6 p.m. on Friday to 6 p.m. on Sunday, so I had only 48 hours to make the game. The limitation for the Frog Jam was announced on Friday morning. It was 1 level. That kind of threw me for a loop, because I usually make platformers for game jams, and I typically separate them into levels, which is an easy way to do things. I started thinking about which game types have only 1 level. I could do one really long platformer level or a puzzle game. I also thought of doing a game where you defend something from a gauntlet of enemies, but I realized that with the short amount of time I had, making multiple enemies would be really difficult. Ultimately, I couldn't think of anything interesting. I decided to wait for the theme of the Paint Jam, which would hopefully inspire me. The theme for the Paint Jam was announced at 6 o'clock on Friday. I had just gotten home and I was ready to start making an awesome game. I checked the game jam page and the theme was Campbell's Soup. What? This was a theme that I wasn't ready for. Usually game jam themes are something deep, like out of control, a hidden world. But Campbell's Soup? I didn't really know what to make of it. Later on, I realized that the theme for the Paint Jam is usually based off of a work of art from history. I actually checked on the page later and there was an explanation of the theme which was definitely not there when I first checked. That would have been very helpful. The theme was supposed to revolve more around that artwork by Andy Warhol, but I'm not super familiar with that aspect of it, so I just decided to focus on the tomato soup because it's yummy and cool. So at this point, I've got the themes of frog and tomato soup, and the limitation of 1 level. I was stumped. Luckily, I was working on this game with my girlfriend, and she suggested a cooking game where the frog is the chef and he's making tomato soup. She also brought the perfect meme to my attention.
Soup time.
So we had a name, and we had an idea. I got to work on the art immediately. I spent all of Friday night making as much art as I could think of needing. I also used a color palette for this jam, which I've never done for art that's not pixel art before. It was really fun and it totally helped bring everything together visually. The next morning, I had to work early, which sucked, but it also gave me time to work on my game at night. I got home around 4 and got to work on the gameplay aspect of things. I added the 3 ingredients I decided on for making tomato soup: onion, tomato, and cream. Of course, this recipe is very simplified, but I needed to make sure that the scope was manageable. Each ingredient is like a little mini game, and they will each chain together so that you have to do a task a certain amount of times before the soup is done. You have to do this all under a timer, which changes based on the difficulty. I realized later that the difficulty thing might be interpreted as multiple levels, which was against the limitation of one of the jams, but it was kinda too late to go back now. I finished the onion phase, tomato phase, and the cream phase by Saturday night. There were definitely no bugs at all, and it all went perfectly and nothing went wrong. Once I fixed all the bugs and got everything running smoothly, I decided to finish everything the next day. At this point, I was really up against the timer. I had to do sound effects, menu art, and programming, and all the finishing touches before 6 o'clock on Sunday if I wanted to make the deadline for the Paint Jam. Usually for game jams I finish way ahead of time or I don't finish at all, so I wanted to change that this time. Sunday turned out to be way more chaotic than I expected. I was going to do my music, sound effects, throw together a menu, and finish everything up. It turned out that fixing bugs was going to be a huge issue. When I did the programming, I made each state like the tomato or the onion or the cream. Unfortunately, when I put it all together, there were so many issues. Most notably, cutting boards would spawn on top of each other and make a huge mess. I actually never fixed this problem, though I definitely did try. I ended up pretty much covering everything up to look like there weren't any issues, but there definitely were. The game is basically held together by Scotch tape. If you encounter the bug where a cutting board appears and then suddenly disappears, pretend it's a gameplay mechanic and not just a bug covered up with another bug. I was able to finish a menu that I'm quite proud of though. The style is fun and it's pretty satisfying. Sometimes when you click a button it will click two at the same time, and I honestly just didn't have time to fix that. Fixing a bunch of minor bugs took me some 3 hours or so I had to rush making the music and sound effects. I made a really short looping song in FL Studio inspired by the song I made for another Game Jam game, The Adventures of Frogman. I made all of the sound effects with my mouth, partially because it was an optional challenge, but mostly because I had like 2 hours left until the deadline. I realized that I still hadn't added the timer, which was kind of a major gameplay mechanic, so I threw that in at the last minute. I wish I could have made it look more aesthetically pleasing than the default black font, but I really didn't have any time for that. Like I said, I usually finish my game jams very early or not at all, so being this close to the deadline was really stressful. I got to work on my itch.io page, including making some promotional art, recording some GIFs, and exporting the game. While I'm talking about it, you can actually follow my itch.io page if you want to play my Game Jam games that I make. I'll put a link in the description. The game is definitely not perfect, but I'm really proud of what I was able to make in such a short amount of time. Additionally, I really like making games in this art style, so I'll probably do it more in the future. Making Game Jam games like this really show me the power of limitation. I never would have made a cooking game, let alone a cooking game with a frog, if it had not been for restricting myself with themes and limitations. I think the limitation of a color palette really helped bring everything together as well, and it challenged me in a new way. If you all do want to play my game for yourself, I'll leave a link to the itch page in the description. Keep in mind, I made it in a short time frame, so there will be bugs, but let me know what you think of it overall. I really enjoyed working on it. Thank you everyone for watching today. If you want to get sneak peeks of what I'm working on, go ahead and follow my Twitter. I posted multiple clips of this project before this video ever even came out, so that's a great place to get some cool behind the scenes stuff. Also join the Discord server to talk to me in the community about my games, animations, or anything else. Thanks everyone for watching today. I'll see you all in the next one. I have lots of good stuff coming up, so look out for that. Goodbye!